Welcome back to our solo training series for the Academy of Self-Defense. This series, or part of this series, is going to focus on some strikes and strike combinations. Now, typically, Aikido is not a huge striking art. We have what's called ateme, which is strikes that are intended to put the aggressor into a position for better usage of technique. We might have a lot of backhand slaps and open hand hits. There are some punches, but it's not really meant to knock anyone out. However, having said that, Nihon Goshin has its roots, its striking roots, its classical roots, like I've said before, from Shotokan karate. We have those classical techniques, but I also like to interject other aspects of other arts into the striking. We have elbows, however, I prefer Muay or Kali type elbows with different angles, where Nihon Goshin focuses on cross face, upward, and rear. I like to change up angles a bit because it gives you more variety and sometimes more power, and sometimes puts you in a position to then utilize your hands to facilitate technique, which is really what we want to do and control the situation. Also with strikes, I always tell my students, look, we do strikes with fists. Of course, I like to show a lot of open hand variations, palm heels, instead of a roundhouse using a slap, which can be quite powerful. Plus, mainly why I like open hand strikes is because it allows us to then grab, it allows us to manipulate the attacker, which is really what we want to do in any type of Aiki art, right? We want to manipulate, whether it's a joint lock, shoulder lock, some type of throw to the ground and control, our hands are open. Last but not least, honestly, and people have to be honest with themselves, how many of you spend, I don't know, 5-6 hours a week striking a heavy bag without wraps? Professional fighters wrap their hands and they still break their hands in a fight. Not all the time, but it's a very high percentage of them. So unless you're practicing a lot of, I like, if I'm going to hit a bag, sometimes I want to feel what it's like without any wraps, because if I'm going to use a strike out in the street, it's not going to be wrapped up, that's for sure. So if a lot of you out there do that, then by all means close your fists. But if you don't, then you might want to think about putting some of these other strikes in your repertoire, because it's going to give you the opportunity to use them effectively, but not, or have a lower chance of breaking your hand. That being said, we are going to show you some, or I'm going to show you, and in my school I do show strikes with a closed fist, but I always preface it with that. We always have options, and I'm going to attempt to show you some of those options in these videos. Again, I'm not a professional boxer. So I do things the way I think that work well with our technique. Some of you out there that have done boxing for a long time, or Muay Thai or something like that, or even more experienced karate players might want to say, oh, I don't know, I would change the angle here, or use your hand this way, put the thumb up versus the thumb down, your stance is back, I don't know. Again, I'm not an expert in those fields. I don't profess to be, but I am pretty proficient in Nihon Goshin, I would like to think. So, and I always like to test things and work things out, and if something doesn't work, I like to modify. Nothing wrong with that. So take this all with a grain of salt. This is how I'm kind of teaching it and doing it right now. That might evolve in 6 months, a year, 2 years, 10 years. I don't know. It might evolve tomorrow. I really don't know at this point. But this is kind of what we're doing right now. Okay. So let's get first, before we talk about our strike combinations, I'm going to show 2 strike combinations today, meaning 2 strikes. And there's can be 3, 4, 5, 10. It's up to you how much you want to take this further. But for this particular video, I'm going to show you 2 strike combinations. It's kind of a basic intro into this. Okay. So first of all, let's talk about stances. And in the last 2 videos, I showed you the Hamni, which is a staple in Aikido technique, Aikido arts. I showed you the front stance. Right. We talked about the Jigatai. And they all have, by the way, their strengths and weaknesses, right? So let's start with the Jigatai. The Jigatai is designed to be very strong side to side, but not very strong forward and backwards. So we use it in instances where we want to be strong side to side. The front stance is very strong front to back, kind of making a wall with your body. That's its strength, but it's not very strong side to side. It has its limitations. The Hamni, however, can be strong both ways. This is why we like to use it in Aikido, because it gives you the best of both worlds. Balance is very equal and allows me to move, as you saw in the last videos. Allows me to move effortlessly. That being said, in a fighting scenario, sometimes, or a lot of times, we will teach it from what we call a modified American fighting stance, whatever that is, okay? It's just a name that my instructor put to it. It's what I use, but all it really is if you look at any boxer, it's the same type of boxing stance. It's a fighting stance. It's a comfortable stance that allows me to go to a Hamni or a front stance, a classical front stance, or even to a Jigatai quickly, okay? But this is, for lack of better terms, just a basic fighting stance. If you want a formula how to get there, get in our Hamni. This is for my students particularly. Get in a Hamni and take your back foot out half a foot and turn your heel and leave your heel up. Of course, we can put our heel down if we need to root, to strike, but I can also, it allows me to spring forward and get extra distance with that rear straight, which I'll talk about, okay? Even with that jab, okay? So, again, what is the perfect distance side to side, front to back? I don't know. It's up to you for this. The fighting stance gives you a wide variety of options. As long as they're not very deep, where obviously this is not a good place to fight from, and it's not very shallow where I'm teetering, somewhere in the middle where you're comfortable is your fighting stance. Mine might be different, okay? So we'll take that heel, hands up. Now, hands up, this is not a good idea. Again, some arts teach this. That's fine. I don't like exposing my center line. I like to be a little bladed, and I like both hands to cover the center line, kind of almost in a plow. You see a plow or a triangular, if you were to look up and down from the ceiling, it would be kind of a triangle. Because this covers the center line, I can get low and high very easily, and I can use this structure, this frame, to naturally block as I'm striking, okay? Now, a lot of this I have taken from FCS Kali. We do a lot of the Panatukan drills and strikes, and we're very square from there, which allow us to block, and it's very strong, and our center line is always covered. It allows us to cover in all capacities. So I have kind of adapted to that over time, okay? So hands are here. The first one we're going to do is just a simple jab. Okay, now what is a jab? The way I see a jab, again, there could be arguments to this, I understand. My view, a jab, two reasons. Number one, it's a range finder. If the person's in front of me, I can kind of see where my distance is while I'm still covering my center line. Okay? A jab can be very, very effective as well. Go watch GSP versus Josh Koscheck. He ate him up with jabs, literally won that fight with jabs. Go look at his face. So jabs can be very, very strong in a fight or in a defense situation. But for me, I look at them more as a rangefinder to set things up, to close distance, to be able to grab. So once again, I'm an Aikido guy. I like to grab. I like to manipulate limbs and hinge joints. So I like to get in. If I can hit while I'm in there to distract and then grab, that's fine. So that's kind of the way I see a jab. Okay? That being said, hand positions. I talked about in the beginning of the video. You want to practice closed fists? It's up to you. But especially for the beginner, if you just walk through my doors and you're watching this video, you're going to be tense anyways in class. So make sure, do a little test. Close your fists, throw a couple punches, and feel how tense your body is in the beginning. Okay? Now open up those hands and it relaxes you. I'm not saying do this, okay? Although you could. Just kind of halfway open. This relaxes you, and you can close your fist just before the moment of impact. That's fine to get a little energy at the very end, a little pop. But I'll talk about some other options with our hands open as well. Okay, so we're here, hands are up. Now I don't like my elbows way in. For me, it's uncomfortable. I like my elbows slightly out, 45 degree almost. Because when I start moving in, I'm going to start taking that 90-degree angle parallel to the ground to get that structure I was talking about. Okay? So again, very simple. This video is going to be very basic, leading into more intermediate stuff down the road. But all we're going to do is just throw that jab out there and back. Again, I adhere to our rules of the straight punch that we teach. When I throw that punch at the very end, notice my knuckles are going to be I'm leading with the first two knuckles. That fist is 45 degrees in line with my forearm. Okay? So I'm here and back and back and back. If I switch, same thing. Look down, make sure you're comfortable. It doesn't feel comfortable, fix it. Again, from here and out and out. Okay? That's all it is. Now, my advice to you with this stuff, rep it. Don't just go out there and say, that looks good. All right, I got it. Perfect. Other side. Oh, that's great. Let's move on. Try to do this for 5 minutes. Time yourself. Just sit there and rep them out until it's comfortable, right? Try to slide in. Slide back. Okay? Jab, switch, jab. Do that for 5 minutes, I promise you it becomes a workout. Plus you're teaching your body that muscle memory we keep talking about. Okay? So practice that. Next we're going to look at a second strike inserted into that, which is going to be our straight punch. Okay, so now let's look at the jab straight combination. Once again, getting into my fighting stance, hands are up, partway open, relaxed, forearms about 45 degrees, both hands covering my center line. Okay? Again, you want to be in that plow position. Okay? All right. So from here, now when we're throwing this jab, a couple things. There's 3 hand positions we can think about. The first one is the punch. Again, being fully aware of what I talked about in the first part of this video with the closed fist. That notwithstanding, one of those, close the fist. And I want to close my fist as it makes a slight second before it makes contact and open it back up. That alone is a good exercise. Almost every student, when we do this for the first time, when they're new in class, I always see them struggle with, they'll close their fist, open and come back and do it backwards because it messes with your head a bit. So even this basic thing to practice, I see advanced students struggle with this too, ones that perhaps haven't done this type of striking in a while, it's new to them, they still struggle with closing that fist as it makes impact. So that in itself is a great drill, okay? So the other thing we can do is a palm heel strike. I'm a big fan of palm heel strikes because number one, they're very powerful. Just as powerful as a punch in my opinion. I had broken many boards when I used to do Dang Sudo and we did board breaking during tests or class or whatever. I broke just as many boards with my palm heel as I did with my fist, okay? So now there is one thing to be aware with a palm heel, the way I see it, is when you strike, I like to strike a palm heel with a angle up position. I don't like a straight palm heel. In my opinion, it weakens the strike. If you have any kind of injuries, like I have a torn bicep, so it'll wreak havoc on my bicep. So torn shoulder, you name it. I'm a beat up martial artist. So I found in my age right now anyways, even before, I like that upper angle. You can get your hip into it, especially if I'm in front of somebody, get under that chin, under that nose, and you can get a great impact of that. Okay, so as I'm here, focus on that. You're going to pull those fingers back, almost like you're making a claw. Pull that thumb back, get energy into that hand. Don't do it with a floppy hand, and strike up. And you're striking the palm of your hand, the base right there, and it lines up with the forearm, just like the good straight punch did. Okay, so I'm here, strike, and back. Back. The other thing you can do is ice wipes. Okay, these are big in Kung Fu, they're big in Kali, Silat. I've seen them in all types of arts. And they're designed to do what they say, take the eyes out, or at least get the person to move their head back, right? So I can ice wipe with that jab, here, or this way, okay? You're not doing this, right? You're just kind of swiping out. Later on, when you're doing knife work, it can also be you can do the same thing with a knife, okay? So I can ice wipe and bring it back, okay? Or the other direction, and really send it out there, okay? Now, adding a straight punch to this. Okay, I'm going to go to this angle so you can see it. A very important or fundamental thing. When I first learned this when I was younger, to me it was like magical. Okay, it was, so the reason we're up on the ball of our foot, not just to be, mobile, is that when I send that jab out, when it comes back, by the way, it's going to come back to that ready position. Okay, it becomes a natural block, obviously. So when it comes back, this straight replaces it. And look how I come up on the ball of my foot. So I'm here, and that gives me extra distance. Watch my punch when I don't do that. Watch when I turn on the ball of my foot. Look at the extra distance I get. Again, when I was younger, I thought that was kind of magic. I'm like, that's cool, I just got longer arms, kind of like Elastic Man, right? And I still tell the kids that to this day, and they get a chuckle out of it. But anyways, so from here, jab, straight, jab, straight, jab, straight. The other side. Jab, straight. Jab, straight. And back. And back. Okay? So that's a simple jab straight combination. Work on that.